You're listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and I've been helping people tune into what lights them up and increase their personal and professional performance for over a decade. Now I'm best known as a high-performance coach helping entrepreneurs like you cut through the noise and create a business and life on your terms. If you're ready to step out of struggle and discover how simple it can be to create a fulfilling, joyful, and successful business without all the overwhelm and long hours, you're in the right place. Hey beautiful, welcome to another episode of the Focus and Fearless podcast. Today I have a guest with me, which I'm really excited about. It's my lovely friend Clare Drake. Now you may recognise that name because she has been on the podcast before. She was with us sort of fairly early on in 2020 talking about Pinterest strategy. Clare had an incredibly successful Pinterest business where she helped entrepreneurs utilise the power of Pinterest to promote their business. So if you listen to this and you use Pinterest, do go back through the episodes and have a listen to that because it is full of absolute gold on how you can maximise Pinterest for your business. But Clare has had quite a transformational 12 months. Things have changed hugely for her, and I've asked her to come back on the podcast to share not only her story of the personal transformation she's been through, but also how she's gone from and made the brave decision to shut down her very, very successful Pinterest business to move on to something completely different that is aligned, it lights up her soul, and it's something that just lights up every day for her. And it's a really brave decision that she's made. Being her friend, I've seen it from the inside, if you like. I've seen the challenges and the struggles, and her bravery has been absolutely incredible, and she shares all of that so openly and beautifully and vulnerably in this episode. So in this episode, you're not only going to learn about how to overcome the fears that you may have if you're feeling drawn to a different path in your business, but also Clare is going to share how you can overcome self-sabotage. We self-sabotage all the freaking time. It's so easy to do, and sometimes we don't even realize when we're doing it. And Clare is going to go through some steps that you can do to first acknowledge that you are self-sabotaging and doing so with kindness, and also look at different ways you can overcome those self-sabotaging behaviors. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Welcome, lovelies, to a very special episode with my very special guest, Clare Drake. Now, for those of you that have been listeners to the podcast since the very beginning, that name may seem familiar to you because Clare has actually been on the podcast before, but talking about a very different subject. So welcome to the podcast again, Clare.
Thank you so much.
I am
lots of change.
Oh my gosh, so much change. And in fact, I am actually just going to let you go straight into your story because, as I said in the introduction, this is going to be vital for every single business owner and actually, quite frankly, every human on the planet to listen to this, because we are going to be talking about self-sabotage. And what I would love for you to go into is how you have found yourself now working in this field and helping people with self-sabotage. So I'm going to hand it completely over to you to share your story.
Thank you, sweet. Yeah, it's so nice to be here again. So if you have listened to this before, listened to me before, then obviously last time was all about Pinterest. So how awesome Pinterest is for business, which I still stand by. But something happened last year and I was like, I just don't think Pinterest is what I'm meant to be doing. Last year was like crazy for all of us. I started getting panic attacks at the start of last year. It was probably about March, April time, just when it was all kicking off. COVID.
For everyone, if you're listening to this on, at some point in sort of 5 years' time, we're talking about, 2020.
Yeah.
That year.
Yeah, the COVID 2020. That was the year. And so I'd struggled with anxiety and depression for a really long time. Also a very heavy drinker, which numbed the hell out of everything. Which was awesome. So I just kind of lived a kind of half-life, I guess, of thinking about alcohol half the time and kind of working on my business and kind of just suppressing all the stuff that I'd gone through in the past, and just dealing with my depression. Most days I would be just sleeping most of the day, and then wake up and have a drink, and that'd be it pretty much. Do a little bit of work. And so so like I said, so I started getting panic attacks, and that kind of threw me. That was like, what the hell is this? And no longer could I feel like I could just get by anymore.
And just for the listeners, because obviously I know your story, but just for the listeners, when the panic attack started, where were you in your sort of business journey? Because your Pinterest business was very successful. It's not like saying it wasn't. Like, your Pinterest business was successful, it was thriving. At what point were you, and what was triggering these sort of panic attacks?
Yeah, so it was really successful, and I remember talking to you at the time. I was like, I just done a really successful launch, and I was ready to gear up for another one. But even before COVID, I was like, I'm not sure, and I know what that is. That self-sabotage, because I've learned a lot from the past year. But at the same time, it's also that gut feeling that this isn't really what I'm meant to be doing. There's something here that is trying to tell me, my soul is trying to tell me something. So I think that's really important, that we'll probably talk about in a bit, is this real? Am I sabotaging this for a real reason? Or am I just sabotaging it because I'm scared of success, scared of failure? So those two things. And so I was kind of in conflict with that. And then I got panic attacks. Now, the panic attacks started, I would say, didn't really have much to do with COVID. I was going through therapy at the time, and so I was dealing with a lot of shit. Something about my story as well I don't really talk about a lot is I lost my mum to alcohol addiction. And during that time, I found out she also had anxiety and depression. That's why she drank. So we lost her when she was 48. I was 8 years old. So it's very difficult for me. And so it was during that time when I was in therapy, I was like, oh shit. You see yourself so much. Now, to be honest, that has always been in my head of, oh, I'm getting closer and closer. I'm closer. I should probably stop drinking. I should probably not drink like this. Now, to be honest, she drank a lot more than I did. But at the same time, it's like, I was still caning a bottle of wine pretty much every day for a long time, for 20-ish years, for the most part. And so that was kind of I was going through that in therapy. So kind of dealing with some stuff with my dad. I was a carer for him in my 20s as well, which was very traumatic for me. So I was dealing with that. So that was coming up, forgiving myself for that. And then the panic attack started. And I just knew during that time that it was because of this, because of my mum, because of my drinking, and because I was starting to forgive myself and let myself feel better. But at the same time, like with panic attacks, I researched the hell out of it. I was like, okay, so what are panic attacks? And it's your body's way of keeping up with your anxious mind. And so my mind constantly was unearthing all this shit that, sorry, can I swear? Sorry, guys. Apologies. That I hadn't dealt with. So, and then it was just like, okay, so I need to deal with this. I need to understand what panic attacks are. And like I said, I researched so much. I changed my diet. I really started taking care of myself. Now, at this point, I hadn't really stopped drinking. Now, I'd done quite a lot of dry months over the years to get to this point. But in December, I eventually became sober. And I know that in my gut, in your heart, is like, I'm done now. It took a long time to get here, like years. I think I was mentioning on my IGTV the other day about it was taken about 6 or 7 years for me to want to get sober, or think that might be something, maybe, perhaps. But even in my mind then, it was like, no, don't be ridiculous. You can't ever do that, because it's such a part of your identity when you've been drinking for so long, or whatever you've been doing. so long if it's a bad habit and it is self-sabotage. And it's quite difficult when I read that of, okay, so alcohol abuse is self-sabotage. Sure, it's more than that, and obviously it is more than that, but it is a very integral part of self-sabotage. You are numbing yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not about the alcohol, it's about what you're numbing. And that was also something that was really important for me to learn, to understand about myself. And yeah, so I started to look inward a lot more of why I was doing this. Yeah, panic attacks pretty much stopped, not instantly, took a couple of months. But I looked into my body, why my body was doing this, so my nervous system, what I needed to do to regulate it, because it is stored trauma. That's what happens as well, so that's really important for me to look at, and that's why I was doing therapy as well. So it was just kind of like, I just want to kind of get over this kind of thing. I want to just move on. And it was a point where it's kind of like therapy kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I should probably deal with this stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm listening to you, and I'm just, for a start, I'm so grateful to you for being super vulnerable and sharing this, because like I said, the last time you were on, like, hey, I'm a Pinterest expert, like,
been working on this, yeah.
And you're being really vulnerable and sharing this. And what I think, why I'm so pleased you are sharing is I fear that there are a lot of people, especially now because of COVID and the lockdowns, who are, perhaps they're not resonating necessarily with the idea that it's alcohol, but what about food? What about other things that they're using to numb that pain?
Yeah.
Because we've had a lot of time to look inward and to pause and to reflect. And man alive, can it be uncomfortable if you're not. We're so blessed to be in this little world where, hiring a therapist or working with a coach or looking inward is very like, okay, well, that's what we do. Actually, for majority of the population, it is just incredibly uncomfortable, and we are programmed to go, right, well, what can I use to numb this, because I'm not comfortable with these feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alcohol, food.
It is so broad. Food, TV. To be honest, I've done everything. I've been like all of the sabotaging things to numb myself. All the things, really. And it's just, but if you think about it in terms of your own life, there's always that one thing that you keep trying, you keep coming back to. You hear a lot of this with like health. You keep stopping and starting. You want to be a healthy person, but there's too many things in the way. Or you want to stop drinking, but you just something triggers you. And that's why self-awareness is really important. You don't have to have therapy to go through that. You've just kind of got to be aware, I think. And when you do fail, to really notice that of, it's not failure. What did I learn from this? Why did this happen? Why did I stop myself? Why did I sabotage myself again? And actually look at it from a point of view of, that's okay. It's actually good. Before the call, we were talking about this, and it is your autonomic nervous system and your subconscious mind is going to sabotage you because it's not safe, because it's not the norm. And so whenever you try to change something, it is going to stop you, because as stupid as it sounds, and when I was like researching the heck out of this and finding this out, it's like, okay, so it's trying to stop me when I try and get sober, thinking that is the right avenue, that's being safe. That doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're absolutely right, because our bodies and minds go, no, well, this is what we've done for this long. This is how we survive. Don't stop drinking. Where you're like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a good idea to stop drinking.
That's it. Your logical mind, your conscious mind is like, this is bad. I shouldn't be drinking like this, or I shouldn't be doing this, or whatever it is. But your subconscious mind is just following the script of what you've always done. And that's what's kept you safe up till now. And so it's going to keep sabotaging you. So what happens is when you start something and quit, that retrains your mind, your nervous system to be like, okay, I've done it again. I step back, do it again, step back, do it again. And that trains you to like, okay, that's safe. We can actually go down that route, because we're safe to do that. And that was something that was like a light bulb moment. And that's what stopped my panic attacks, of really kind of being aware of that. of it's all right to do another dry month. I say dry month. Sometimes it'd be like 2 or 3 days, and not be really hard on myself, and just look at, okay, so I haven't done this. I haven't done what I set out to. My conscious mind wants. Why is that? What happened for me to stop that? And so it's been a busy year, really. A lot of
I mean, this has been huge, because like I said, the last time you were on the podcast, and you had this, wildly successful business teaching people Pinterest. I worked with you. I got my assistant trained up with you. I'm like, you are amazing at what you did. And so you've gone through all this personal transformation.
Yeah.
How did that affect, or how did that tie in with your business and change of direction?
Yeah. So that was pretty early on. I think when I was working on trying to stop my panic attacks and get my mental health better, I just looked at my life. I was like, okay, I knew drinking, that was going to be like, okay, let me just get to drinking after I've done all of these other things. So I don't have to look at that. So I was looking at my life. I was like, the main thing was my business. Now, it was successful. It was like we said at the start, I just had a successful launch. I could have grown it massively if I'd committed. And during COVID, it would have flown, to be honest. Being a digital marketing platform, it's brilliant for that. And yet I was like, no, I can't do that. There's just like, in my heart, it was just like, I can't be doing this anymore. And I didn't know at that point what I wanted to be doing. And then, it just kind of comes to me after a few months. It's like, I sat down with my husband. I was like, I know this is crazy. And I'm like you said, I'm good at it. I know it. I've spent a long time building this business up, but I need to close it down. I just can't do this anymore. We were like, let's do them. And the relief was, I can't even, I was getting emotional just thinking about it.
I can remember, and I can see it in your face, and the people that are watching this on video rather than listening to it directly, it is emotional, and I did the same thing with my wedding business. Built up this business, and yet a year into it, I was like, I've started the wrong business. Whoops, I was meant to do something very different. And it is what I would love, if you can, is that I'm sure there are so many people listening to this going, oh, that's kind of me, that's where I want to go. There's two things I'd really love to explore more with you is, firstly, how did you get past basically your ego to kind of go, no, I am going to get rid of this perfectly successful money generating business? How did you allow yourself to get past that? And how did you also realize, given everything you were going through personally, how did you know whether that you were could it have been a self-sabotage, or whether it was actually truly your soul's desire to move on to something else? Because that, I know there are going to be people listening to this going, well, I don't know. I'm not quite sure which one it is. So I'd love for you to touch on those two subjects.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of whether it was sabotage or not, I went back and forth quite a lot on that. I talked to my therapist at the time, and that was so like, I keep thinking about all these different things that I could be doing. Like initially, I think it was around probably about April, May time, I was like, I started calligraphy, and that was a new business. I was like, I'm going to start a calligraphy business. And it's something I always really like doing and things like that. But I was always looking for something else. I was like, okay, if I keep looking for all these different things, then something isn't right. And honestly, it came from a place where the big decision for me was, that's it. It wasn't like, oh, should I, because of the money and all this? Because of my mental health, it had really taken a dive. And I thought the only way I was going to get better and feel better and actually make progress in my life was just to cut it off. I tend to do that. That's my personality of, no, done with that. very spontaneous in that respect. I don't dwell on things too much. If I know in my heart, my intuition, that's it, then that's it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of person. My husband is, and that's why I talk to him about things like, does this make sense? He was like, look, if it's for the benefit of you and your well-being, then yes, it's the right thing. And so that I knew that was the thing to do. And I knew as soon as I closed my website and stopped all my emails and stuff, it was like, I can't even tell you, it's like all the stress that I felt I was under just lifted. And it was just like, okay, so that was the thing. Because when I started getting panic attacks, I was like, okay, so let's look at my life. I'm not going to think about work because that's awesome. Yeah. I was literally in my head of, it's going really well, things are great. No, that's not stress. So it must be something else. And it wasn't until I was like, is it though? And then I started looking at that, and then it was like, okay. And that was really just something that I just knew. So yeah, it was, so those two things, it was like, yeah, in my head, is this self-sabotage? But at the same time, it's like, I don't care. I'm done. I'm really done with it. And then I started looking into, okay, so I've gone through a lot in my life. And as everyone has, it's like, how can I use this? How can I use the difficulties, and how can I use that for the future? And I thought, and a good friend of mine, she'd started doing life coaching, and she started talking about this, and she was talking about this, and I was like, this sounds incredible. This sounds like what my heart has been calling me to do. And so I looked into it, and I started that, which starts next month. I can't wait. But yeah, it just feels so right to be doing that, and actually taking what I've gone through. So obviously now I'm sober. Never did I think, like, at any time that I would be really utilizing that, my biggest vulnerability, I think, because I failed at it billion times, that I would be using that and my mental health struggles to actually connect with people and help people in that way. And that's where the self-sabotage comes from. That's where it all originated from, why I want to help people with that. Because it's not always going to be the drink. It's not always going to be anxiety or depression that people are dealing with. It's all the things that we do, just our mindset of how we stop ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's small or big. And we have so much potential if we just stop numbing ourselves, I think. And that's something that I've learned. And it's just like, okay, if I can go down this route of helping people from what I've gone through, then.
Yeah. And this is what's so beautiful. And this is why I get really excited when people go down the route of coaching and sort of helping others. And this does happen a lot with, I'm going to say primarily females. Obviously, there's loads of incredible male coaches out there as well. But I do see it a lot with women when we've gone through an experience. It's almost just like, oh, now that I've gone through that horrendous shit of sorting it out for myself.
Yeah.
Now I can actually empathize and see it happening. Because I don't know about you, but once you've gone through something, you see the self-sabotage in yourself and things like that.
Oh, yes.
You see it everywhere. Then you're like, oh my gosh, the world's doing this to itself. And it's so beautiful that these experiences that have been horrendous for you, that you've had to go through, and you've bravely faced them all and sort of going through them, and we still are evolving. We are always doing the work. Is that you can now use that to help people. And how does that feel now for you to sort of say this is what you're doing?
I know I know I've mentioned this to you, but a few months ago I joined a program called Awaken Her Soul, which is very much about self-discovery, leaning into your power and who you are and accepting yourself. And it was exactly that. It was like, I know, and I even said the other day to Madison, who runs it, I said, I feel like everything that I've gone through in my life has brought me up to this point, and I'm so grateful for every single thing, every struggle, every heartbreak. Like, I've lost my parents, the way I lost them, my numbing, which lasted a long time, not really being able to feel like I'd be myself at any point, until recently. As I was saying, that I'm so grateful for everything, because without any of that, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be able to help people who may be going through something similar. So it's just like a light bulb moment of just feeling like at peace with myself and what I've gone through. And I know that life's not over. I'm always going to get struggles, but I think once you start looking inward and looking at why you do things, become aware of yourself, it's like growth. You're constantly searching for more growth of what more can I find to discover about myself.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. And this is the thing, and I really want to go into some more of the ways people do sabotage, because I know listeners are probably like, okay, their minds are probably going like, oh, I do this.
Yeah.
And especially in business, how we self-sabotage without even necessarily realizing it. But what I think is so fascinating for everyone to realize is that I remember having a cup of tea with you in that beautiful place near the beach back in the day when we could meet humans in person.
I know. So long ago.
I remember having that conversation with you then, that we were both like, oh my goodness, this year I just feel like there's another layer,
Yeah.
evolving, and like you think, oh, I'm there, and then boom, something else. And it's I do feel it's been really heightened since 2020, because we've all been forced to pause, and for those listening, it can be really uncomfortable. And I think the fact that you've used the term numbing, it's so key. So how we've looked at sort of how people are probably numbing these things. But when we're looking at self-sabotage, and specifically in business, I think we can all probably relate to going in the biscuit tin, or drinking too much, or not exercising, all those things that we do in our personal life, which we've been doing for decades. What about in business? How does self-sabotage show up when you're running a business?
Well, that's massive. I did that a lot, and I think all of us are going to do that at some point. But what I like to think of it is that's as is. It's a lot of as is. He's not showing up. You're not showing up in the way that you need to. You're procrastinating. That is a huge one for so many people. Oh, I should be playing with my dogs instead of doing something to do with work, to grow my business, to connect with someone, to ask for the sale. Also really difficult for a lot of, especially creative women, getting past that. And that is sabotage. And also not having boundaries in place. So that's where people talk about, oh, I'm just getting sucked in by social media. Well, that's because you don't have boundaries. So you need to have personal boundaries. You need to have boundaries for what you're doing on the platforms. And that's something where I'm very spontaneous. Like we said, I like to just dip in and out, but I dip in and it consumes me. And I'm like, why did I do this? Why did I log on? Why am I on Instagram right now? I'm not doing anything. And I think that's also sabotage as well. So in terms of like your personal life, boundaries is really important to have. And something else I've been learning on this program that I've just finished is setting boundaries. And it's really hard to set boundaries if you've never set boundaries with anyone, or and suddenly you're like, yeah, I need to do these things. And they're like, no. Where's this come from? So in terms of business, it is procrastination. It's doing something that you're stopping yourself from. So you want success, you want to reach more people, you want to make an impact, but you're doing something other than what you should be. And I have done that a lot. I would, like I said, I would nap a lot. I would play games in the day. I actually did that yesterday, but I don't have work at the moment. So it's watch TV, it's anything that is stopping you from really connecting with people. And that shows up a lot. And also when you're trying to be busy all the time, doing all the busy work, and not doing the work that's actually going to make a difference. And thinking that the busy work is important when it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
that can happen so frequently. And
yeah,
I've had conversations with a lot of clients about this when they're like, I'm so busy. And then I'm like, but did you do the 3 things you told me you were going to do? Oh, no. And it's like,
you're not
okay,
busy.
let's have a different conversation about where you're sabotaging. So I think one of the things that definitely shows up is procrastination.
Yeah.
What I see more and more is that, especially for people that are a little bit, they have woken up a little bit and they're like, okay, I'm procrastinating, but they just can't seem to stop.
Yeah.
And then they'll just get annoyed with themselves.
Yeah.
And then we end up going into the personal self-sabotage of like, I'm just going to eat biscuits to make myself feel better about the fact that I'm procrastinating over my business and self-sabotaging there as well.
Yeah.
So when you are working with clients, and I know we'll talk about that at the end, or how you're working with clients at the moment, but how do you help them get out of that? Because once they're recognizing it, it's almost worse, isn't it? You have that moment of awareness, you're like, oh, I'm doing this to myself.
Yeah.
Now what do I do?
What do I do now? I think the key is understanding something that I always start with is to make any change, it's going to be gradual. And I think that's something that isn't talked a lot about, especially with self-sabotage, is it's not just a mindset shift. You can't just click your fingers and just stop doing something. You've been doing something because it worked. And you've got to explore why it worked and have compassion for yourself about why you've been doing that. So it's self-awareness, understanding the thing that you've been doing. Okay, so I know I've been procrastinating. I've not been posting videos or connecting with people or whatever it is. Okay, I know that. How do I stop that? And you've got to understand where that comes from. So without dwelling too much in the past and blaming others and blaming situations, just look at, okay, so I may have been doing that to protect myself from this scenario. This is why, okay? And then you kind of lead to, okay, so what do I want? What is this behavior stopping me from? And with me, like in terms of my drinking, it wasn't my health, to be honest. I had worked really hard on my mental health over the year, last year, but I was still drinking. I was like, yeah, just knock a few back. And I was drinking actually more than I had been in quite a while. And so it's like, okay, so my why wasn't my health. It was helping people, building this new business and getting honest with myself about, okay, so I can't do that. I can't explore what I need to be doing in the world if I'm still drinking like that. If I'm trying to help people with that, making big changes, and I'm not, I'm like, what? I can't do that. And so that is a big why for me. And yeah, thoughts come up like, one drink. I can't do one drink. I know this by now. And also it's really out of integrity with myself. If I was doing that and working with clients and helping them with a big thing in their life, then I would not feel right about that. And so that is a big why for me. And so I think when you're thinking about your sabotaging habits of, okay, what's the real reason why you want to stop this? That's really a gut instinct that leads with your emotions, not just your head of, yeah, I need to stop doing this thing because of this, but your heart's not really in it. Or if someone else is telling you to do something because it makes sense. No.
Don't we see that a lot as coaches? We're like, please do this. I promise you it will work. And then no.
Yeah. The greater good.
And I think what's really interesting is something you said, which I talk about all the time, is knowing what you want.
Yeah.
And I think as clear as we can be on knowing what we want, there is so much fear sometimes about going from where we are now, even though we desperately want what we want and we want this new shiny life, we want, whatever it is. We're so comfortable, even though we might think we're uncomfortable, we are comfortable in the struggle. We're comfortable in the old. And actually it shows up so often with the procrastinating and the holding ourselves back. And exactly like you said, it's about showing up the way you want to do it. And it's so frustrating for those that, might be listening and going, oh my God, that's me. I can be like on fire for 2 weeks and then boom, I'll just stop. And this happens, I mean, this is the perfect time to be having this conversation. I was about to say for people going back to the gym, but that's just my dream at the moment. But people who are like, right, I'm going to do my exercise workouts, and by the middle of January they're back on the beers, eating the burgers, and everything's gone to hell again. So
but that's it. That's really important to look at why that happens. Understand that is not just the way it is. Well, it is the way it is because it's the way you've always done it. So it's your body like saying, yeah, we're just going to keep on with this. But also look at, okay, why? What specific thing made me stop and have the biscuits and makes me think that I can't do this? And that is a really powerful thing to ask yourself. Do I really believe that I can have this? Do I? And that may take a lot of effort. It may take a lot of tries. And that's why, like, the path isn't linear, like with self-sabotage, getting over it. It's not just click your fingers, oh, I'm just going to stop this thing and just be wonderful. I'm just going to be that perfect person that I am. It takes a long time. But it's the awareness to start with. When you start to become aware of yourself and why you feel that way, then you can change.
And something also you said a bit earlier on, which I think is key, which I know so often people overlook this, but it's the forgiveness piece. It's actually having compassion for yourself when you have, and I know I've got lots of different listeners on this podcast, but for business owners especially, we are always pushing forward, always there's the next thing, and we are so hard on ourselves. And actually, when things don't go, and I'm going to put it in inverted commas, right, or as you planned, and things go in slightly off track, oh my goodness, there's just no compassion for ourselves. It's all or nothing. And there can be so much resistance to forgiving ourselves, rather than going, okay, it went wrong, or it didn't go how I planned. I don't ever think things necessarily go wrong. There's always something to learn from it, but it didn't go to plan. Now what can I do to actually move this forward, rather than sulking about it, quite frankly, for a few days, which I've totally done before, and thrown my toes out the pram and been like, it didn't work. I followed the steps, I did all the things, and it still didn't work. I'm going to have a tantrum, drink, eat chocolate, and then in a few days I'll decide to get back to it. So
and also, if you do that, it's all right. And it's just like not beating yourself up. So if something does go wrong and you feel a bit shitty and you have all the wine and the chocolate and skip the gym for however long, it's all right. You're human, and just be kind to yourself. But also look at the situation of, okay, so why did this happen? How can I be better next time?
Absolutely. And it is about putting sort of processes and steps in place as well, which is sort of beyond the scope of this episode. But I do think it's really important for people to realize that when they're procrastinating, it's not because they're lazy, it's not because they're bad, or any of these things that they're telling themselves. It's like there is a reason. You are holding yourself back because somewhere in that mind of yours you think it's a really good idea to stay exactly where you are.
That's it. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of what other people think. That is a big one. And that is something that's I find really difficult. But if I do this, what will people think of me? That was the thing when I was closing the business. Whilst I knew it was right for my mental health and things, I was like, God, people are going to think I'm insane. But I was like, I don't actually care. I don't care. I'm doing it for me. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so what do I do now? I'm going to be a life coach. What are people going to think? It's like, oh my God, there's so much stigma of, oh my God, what life coaches are like. I was like, I don't want to be tagged in that.
Oh my God, I know.
It's like, oh yeah, because you want to help people, that's a bad thing, is it?
Oh, absolutely terrible.
It's crazy, isn't it? Society. Oh, I could go on a whole spiel with society, but I won't.
I think there's probably another episode to be recorded about this, but it's what I think is really interesting what you just said about is not caring what people think. And I found it with my own experience, I don't know whether you were the same, is I came to that conclusion quite quickly and quite comfortably about strangers. I could not care less if someone said something awful on my Instagram post. I'm like, literally 0 F's given, like I don't care. However, people that knew me, friends, family, I mean my family's actually apart from people that are in the similar business, like, what do you do? Like, how do you make money doing this? So saying things on my personal Facebook page, being bold and myself, and I swear like a squatty, like swearing and wearing the things I want to wear, and talking in the way I want to talk, and talking about my business, and being like, actually, this is me. That genuinely has only happened probably in the last few months. Strangers, fine. Family, that's a whole other ball game.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it gets me quite anxious in terms of, if, for example, he's lovely, but my father-in-law, he's like my husband, he's very practical. Like when I was starting the other business, it's like, lovely, what are you doing? How are you making money? kind of thing. And it was just like, it got me really, I don't know, why are you asking me these things, kind of thing. And I would feel really awful. Whereas if someone else asked me, I would like go into like all the ways how amazing it was, and how much I love it, and and how much money brought in, and I would go like crazy telling people. But my family, I was like, yeah, it's all right.
And isn't it so interesting? And this is why I bring it up, because I really want people to realize that we can think that we are 100% in our power, and we can think that we're owning this and we're strong, and we may well be at a networking event or speaking to fellow business friends who get it. But how do you feel about putting a post on your personal Facebook page? How do you feel eventually when we can meet up with friends and family, talking about your business in that same impassioned way, and actually being like, I'm amazing? And when they look at you like a lunatic, or like, do you not want a secure job? And you just no, actually, thank you very much. Quite happy with my life the way it is. How there's always layers to it, and it's not something, like you said earlier, it's not something you can necessarily just click your fingers and it happens. There are layers to this, and it takes time to work through it and get that confidence. And actually, one thing I talk to my clients about is it's about having that evidence. If you have no evidence that it's safe to be you, in all situations, it's very hard for you to trust that it is going to be okay. Because we can catastrophize everything in our minds until we start sort of dipping our toe into like, if I say this, is that okay? Or if I show up like this, is that okay? And then you're like, okay, the world didn't completely crumble, the sky didn't fall.
Maybe. And that's your subconscious. So you're training your subconscious to be like, okay, it's safe, I can do this, rather than just quitting, which is, I think that's what we all think we do when we stop something, even if it's like for 2 days or 5 days or like a year, and then you're like, oh yeah, but I quit, so forget about it. No, don't forget about it. It's brilliant, and what do you learn from it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is all about the lessons. And I think I mean, I can share very briefly, I think I've shared it on the podcast. At the end of 2019, I decided I was going to go sober for an entire year. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, well, you'd manage it fine now.
I can imagine.
Looking back at 2020,
that has popped into my head.
I think I would have done that very well. But I absolutely decided I was going to be sober. I had no issue with alcohol. Honestly, I could take it or leave it. But for some reason, at that point, I was like, that's it. I'm going to not drink any alcohol. I got to 7 weeks, and I was due to go on a spa weekend with a friend. And all I wanted was just have a couple of glasses of champagne, because we were going for a spa, and I was like, oh, that'd be so nice, but I can't. And that was another way of me actually self-sabotaging, because I was controlling my life. Like, no, I've made a commitment, I must stick to it, come hell nor high water. And it was actually only because I spoke to a dear friend who's now actually one of my coaches, and she was like, why can't you just give yourself permission? I was like, oh yeah, I could do that, couldn't I? That's really simple. I could just say, yes, I can have a couple of glasses of champagne on my spa weekend. And that's what I did. And I didn't drink again for the rest of like the month. And I was like,
we get so rigid on what we think, what failure is. And it's like, okay, so just, if you want to do that thing, then do it. And then continue. Don't just stop. Because if it's important enough, then you will continue with it. But also just being kind to yourself of, I want champagne, I'm going to have it.
And I just think it's really interesting how, this self-sabotage shows up. It's such a broad topic. And I know when we were sort
Yeah.
of
Oh, it's
podcast, we're like, this could go on for hours. So when we're talking about self-sabotage, it shows up in so many different ways.
yeah.
It can show up in the real masculine energy of trying to control everything.
Yeah.
It can show up in, what you might be classing as laziness, procrastination,
Mm-hmm.
all these different ways. And exactly what you said about being aware is the key.
Yeah.
So as we sort of round up towards the end, my gosh, I've already seen the time. We end up talking about so many different things.
So much.
So one thing I would like to just touch on quickly is, do you see any differences? Because we both work with males and females.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any difference in how self-sabotage shows up between the sexes for guys and women in business?
Yeah. We were saying it's I will say that my husband, for example, he is very logical, but he gives himself a really hard time if he doesn't meet his goals. Whereas when I've worked with other people, it's very much like, oh, but I'm going to try again. And we do we do give ourselves a hard time, but with men, I found it's very much all or nothing. It's like, oh, I've done this, I've failed, let's just give up.
Yeah.
Not generalizing, but for what I've seen, they kind of do that. Whereas women, from the most part, we keep trying, even though we do internalize the failure, we've failed. But I believe that we still keep trying and trying and trying and trying. So that's what I've seen.
It's really fascinating, because it's definitely something I've seen. But when I was sort of preparing for this sort of interview with you, is that I was like, actually, this does show up a little bit different. And actually, the word you use with females, I do find that they internalize it a lot.
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? I've become this, I've done that. And it's like, it can become a much bigger beast.
Yeah.
We can actually turn not following a plan or not getting the outcome we want into this whole story, whole meaning, when actually it's like, no, your launch just didn't go to plan.
Yeah.
That's okay. Let's look at that and move on.
Yeah.
Learn the lessons and move on. Whereas what I do find with some of my male clients is that if the plan doesn't go to plan, it's a proper, like, huge amounts of frustration and almost anger of like, but the plan's not worked. And it's like, why hasn't it? It's almost like why hasn't it worked? It was on paper, like it was planned out.
That's it.
It's just very much. It's like, and it's very much. It's less of a, I'm not saying guys don't internalize. Of course they do.
Yeah.
We are all human. We all have very similar struggles, but I do find that guys will just be like, well, what is it? And they'd be very logical, which I actually love about guys. Like, right, what happened? Like, look at the past. What happened? What did I do? And that, be very, very hard on themselves. But it's very much an outer, like, well, where did this go wrong? What did I do wrong to make sure I off plan? So I find it very interesting, just because I know I've got men and women listening to this podcast. It's a very interesting thing that I've noticed over probably the last sort of 8 months or so. And I'm like, we do this.
I think women can learn a lot from that as well. I think whilst we do internalize our failures, so to speak, actually coming from a place of, okay, so let's look at this logically, especially with self-sabotage of, okay, what's the logical reason I sabotage myself this time? And, or why did this plan not work? Whereas just looking inside, I mean, for me, it was always, what did I do wrong? I'm a bad person. I'm a failure. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. All of those things, rather than thinking, I'm human. I didn't do it because of these external reasons, not that it's anything to do with me. So we can learn from each other, I think, men.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And before we sort of round up and we start talking about what resources you've got, because I know you've got some resources to help people with self-sabotage as well, is when we're looking ahead and we're sort of looking ahead for this year, so 2021, it's going to need to be flexible. That's the word I keep using with my clients. I'm like, be flexible, just plan your weeks, and let's just take it week by week. How can people sort of approach this year? And if they are sort of starting to feel like, you know, they're having that awareness, they're having those sort of light bulb moments of like, maybe something's a little bit off here, but they don't necessarily know what to do, given that we're in 2021 and Christ knows what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone next week. How can people take those steps forward to make sure that they're living their lives and running their businesses with as least amount of self-sabotage as possible?
I think the main thing is baby steps and compassion. So thing that I did like a life audit. So just have a look at your life, just like take some time, journal, think about a few things where you might be stopping yourself. Don't tackle everything, because that's crazy. If there's one specific thing that you know is stopping you from doing something really great, that you really want to make a change, then focus on that one, and the one that brings up the most emotion as well, because that is a good sign that that's the one to focus on.
100%.
And just look at it, journal about it. How can you make a baby step towards this? Don't try and stop it, because then you'll fail and then you'll think you're a failure. All of that nonsense. But what little baby steps can you do? Can you, for example, if you like a drink, think, maybe I could just go with that drink for a while. Do a week. If a week's way too easy for you, then maybe a month. And just have a look at your what it is that you're doing. So procrastination. Is there something specific that you know you need to be doing that you procrastinate? Do you have a special procrastination habit go to that you focus on? And so whenever you get close to that, you're like, okay, so hold on a minute. Why am I doing that right now? Why am I loading the dishwasher when I've got to make a call, or I've got to do a video, or whatever it is that is going to further your well-being, your happiness, what you actually want? So baby steps, and really have a look at what you really want. So why is this thing getting in the way? And I think it's really important just to have a look from a point of view of no kind of anger towards yourself or why it's happened or anything like that. It's happened because you've needed it to happen, because it's keeping you safe. So just have compassion and just having a look at, okay, so without it, what might my life be like? And start thinking about that, and then just work towards that bit by bit.
Yeah, love that, 100%. And I think going back to one of the very early things you said right at the beginning about you having gratitude for your struggles, like having gratitude for all the challenges that you've been through.
Yeah.
When you can get to that point, because I definitely am at that point as well. It's really light. It feels so good, rather than oh my goodness, this happened and it's terrible. So realizing, and we've all seen it on Instagram posts and like on memes and all this stuff, like life is happening for you, not to you. That is true. You really actually realize it, when you really look back and you look at where you are. I know this might be hard for some people listening when they're like, nope, I'm not going to believe that right now because I'm not happy. Things are really tough and actually things aren't going how I planned. I promise you, I've had moments, and Claire shared her moments as well, where you're just like, I can't handle this is wrong, you know. Life is not going how it should be. I've done my vision board and it doesn't look anything bloody like that. Like, what's going on? I've done all the things, and yet another struggle comes and another struggle comes, because we needed to learn another lesson. And it's tough at the time. It is so tough, and it doesn't ever stop. And I think that's like almost like the worst message in some ways to send out. It's like, by the way, it's not all going to be unicorns and rainbows once you've done some mindset work. It continues. In fact, the more inner work that you do, I feel like the more layers you reveal, and then you're like, oh, hang on, I got to shift that. You're like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, journal on that one, because that's got to go.
However, when you get to that point of really being grateful for everything you have gone through, you get to that, it takes a while to get there. So when you do get there, it kind of makes things easier. So the struggles become easier because you're more self-aware. So whilst there are more and more struggles, it just seems easier because you're like, okay, so you come from a place of knowing that whatever you've gone through, It's happened. I say it happened for a reason. I don't like saying that, but I think in terms of what you go through, you can learn from and you can use that. And yeah, I suppose it is. Everything does technically happen for a reason for you. As awful as some things can be, to get to a point where you're like, I'm at peace with that. And then I can move on. And if I want to help people with that, that is just like butterflies and unicorns and feeling like you have a purpose. That's what it was for me. It's like, I can use this. I really feel like I have a purpose in life now.
Yeah.
That I didn't feel like that with Pinterest. Like I've said, I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I enjoyed helping people. That was the kind of the pull. But at the same time, I never thought, oh, this is my purpose.
Yeah.
Whereas now I feel I'm using what I've gone through for my purpose, and it does feel very different.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And my wish for every single listener is that they all get to that point, or if they're at that point, that they celebrate that, because you just touched it. For those that aren't watching the video, you just touched a sort of a heart area there, and I'm like, oh my god, no, that I feel it. You feel that you're like, yes, this is what I was supposed to be doing all the time. It's just that it is a heart, mind, everything, whole body connection of like, oh, this is what I was here to do. And it takes time to find it, but it's so beautiful. So how can people reach out to you, and what can they, I think you've got an amazing download for them which can actually help them with the self-sabotage.
Yes, so I have a guide called Ditch Self-Sabotage. I do mention it's not overnight, but you can look into what your sabotaging behaviors might be. I give you some examples of what the big ones are, how you can identify why they're happening, looking a little bit into your past, but don't dwell on it. Don't go back into your past and just obsess of, oh, this way because of this person. And it's very much why it's happened so you can move forward. And then so what big things do you want? Why is it stopping you from achieving that? So that's the guide. There's lots of journal prompts, and you can download it at my website, which is claredrakecoaching.com. And you can catch me on Pinterest, obviously. Lol, I'm using that, and Instagram as well, so I'm most active on Instagram.
Amazing. I'll be putting all your handles and links in the show notes, but also, how can people, if people are listening to this and going, I really need her help, because especially maybe they've picked up on specifically the getting sober and that sort of thing, with the kind of self-sabotage with food and drink and all those kind of things during lockdown. How can people work with you?
Well, I've just launched my one-on-one package. However, I am looking for beta clients at the moment. So I'm looking for people who want to make a change, big change, they want my support with. The investment is completely free because it's beta, but I do ask for regular feedback and a testimonial at the end. It's a 3-month package. And so you can apply on my website as well. So I'm really excited to be doing that. And just kind of doing this work and just helping people in this way. And no matter what you're struggling with, we can obviously explore that. It doesn't have to be what I've talked about. Obviously, getting sober was a big thing for me, but it's all self-sabotage. If there is something in your life that's stopping you from where you want to be, which is the goal in life, then obviously reach out and we'll have a chat.
Incredible. And is that for just business owners, or is that for anyone in life?
No, in life.
Amazing.
Heart-led people who want to make changes in their life.
Incredible. Oh my god, you are going to be inundated, I have no doubt. How many, before you do get hundreds, how many spaces have you got left for that?
Well, I said 3, but potentially 5. So we'll see.
So get your applications in quick, because they are not going to last very long.
So I can push it to 5, but apply as soon as you can.
That is incredible. Thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable, sharing your story. It's genuinely been beautiful. As your friend, it is like amazing to just see the transformation that's happened in the last sort of 12 months. So everyone, do reach out to Claire. Make sure you're following her on Instagram. She shares some amazing stuff. and be quick to get one of those spots, because she's gonna be costing thousands, people. So like, this is not ever going to happen again.
So yeah, once this is done, it's probably going to be about £1,500 to £2,000 to work with me. But if you can get in before that, then obviously it's just time and energy. I still, obviously just want to really help you. And obviously getting that feedback from me is also really helpful. So that's why I'm doing it.
For sure. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the podcast again. And thank you for listening, everyone. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation or have a question that you would like answered in an upcoming episode, head over to Instagram and connect with me at Heather Angel Coaching. If you enjoy this podcast, please share your thoughts in a review on iTunes. I truly value your feedback and I take the time to read every single review. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you in the next episode.